we have the Territorial Youth Collective presenting the Territorial Youth Strategy in Action. We have Erin Carton. She's a Youth Collective Director, Territorial Youth Collective, and she has worked in the Yukon field in outdoor education, programming, and project management, and is passionate about creating systemic change for youth now and for generations to come. She is originally from Timmins, Ontario, and has been in the Yukon for over 2 years, working with youth and the community. In the Youth Collective Director position, she works to coordinate the Territorial Youth Collective and oversee the collaborations and projects within this group, including the Territorial Youth Strategy. In her free time, she can be found hiking in the mountains, at the property studio, or thrifting new treasures. You guys gonna be standing? Okay, so take that one. Take that one. Next, we have Aaliyah Grant. She is a collective outreach coordinator, Territorial Youth Collective, and is a member of the Carcross Tagish First Nation. A part of the Ishkiton clan, growing up in the Yukon, Aaliyah has done volunteer work, helping co-create an alternative school program for youth in her community and more. She is the collective outreach coordinator at BITE, Empowering Youth Society, facilitating workshops, helping implement the Territorial Youth Strategy, uplift youth voices, and making connections to the Yukon communities to uplift youth. Let's put our hands together and welcome our guests.
Hello. Hi, everybody. Thank you for having us. We're super excited to be here. Really excited to be following Amy and Stephanie, who we've been working closely with on a lot of different projects. So yeah, like was just said, my name is Erin. My pronouns are she, her. I'm the Youth Collective Director.
And I'm Aaliyah Grant. I'm the Collective Outreach Coordinator, pronouns she, her as well.
And in the programs, it does say CBYF. That is our old acronym. We're still kind of transitioning. We've had a change in project funding, which we will talk a little bit about in our presentation. But yeah, we are the Territorial Youth Collective.
So just a little bit about us for the people that don't know what the Territorial Youth Collective is or knew us when we were considered CBYF still. The Territorial Youth Collective has been a journey of collaborative efforts between youth-serving organizations that started from funding from Tamarack Institute. Tamarack Institute was where we got the name CBYF for roughly 4 years. And with continuous collective impact approach, sorry, my notes were worded weird. We end up being housed under by Empowering Youth. We facilitate a collective of youth organizations, youth, First Nation, and YG partners, as well as we provide workshops, host events for youth, bring programming and engagement to communities, and facilitate the process of a territorial youth strategy. Just for a little bit of what we're going to be going through today, we're going to talk a bit about our values. We're going to go through a little bit of our project timeline, talk about the actual territorial youth strategy, goals and objectives, where we are, strategy and action, implementation teams, and accountability. So, with that, some of our values are consideration of the rights of children and youth. We work with YCO to help uplift that when it comes to uplifting youth voices. Intersectionality, I probably said that wrong. Yukon First Nations ways of knowing, doing, and being, youth voice, leadership, and participation, and then just a little blurb of our vision. Pretty much our big vision for the territorial youth strategy is Yukon youth have a sense of belonging throughout the territory. This means that they feel empowered and have a positive sense of self in their futures, have mutual caring and fulfilling relationships, and feel connected to and supported by their family, community, and land.
I'm going to give a little background on the collective itself and kind of our timeline, where we came from. The collective has informally existed for around like 8 or 9 years now. a while ago, youth organizations came together after many youth events, saying that we want to hear youth voices. Youth voice needs to be uplifted. It needs to be included in decision making, and that was based off of a bunch of town halls that happened. The Yukon Youth Want campaign by Byte, the Change Summit, and the YCAO response to General Audit Report. So the partners of BGC, Boys and Girls Club, Byte, the Child Advocate Office, KDFN, Youth Advisory Committee to Council, Youth of Today Society, and Skookum Jim's Friendship Center came together kind of informally at that time and said, we need to do something differently. We need to create a territorial youth strategy that is influencing what is going on for young people across the territory. And we need to work better together and stop duplicating services and, working in these silos. So the whole basis of the collective is to work better together and share resources and share knowledge. So from there in 2020, that group of organizations applied to some project funding with Tamarack Institute, which was Communities Building Youth Futures. So that was a national 4-year project fund. So there were CBYFs across the country working on youth voice and youth issues in different communities. And what it looked like in other communities, it was typically the CBYFs were focused on like one small municipality or town. And this group pushed back and said, we can't just be like CBYF Whitehorse, it needs to be CBYF Yukon. We need to be serving the whole territory. So that was a really amazing instance of like pushing back on funders and to change what their like metrics are and like what they're expecting. And they actually agreed and like allowed us to change a lot of how we did things compared to the rest of the country. From there, we created a community partnership table. So this looks like a table of many different partners, NGOs, government, First Nation government, youth themselves, coming together, sitting down together, working on a common agenda. What do we want to work on together? With the territorial youth strategy as kind of the overarching project. And then from there, action teams were created focusing on specific areas, so mental wellness, action team, career inclusion, individualized learning. Flip my page. And then from there, year 3 and 4, and currently, we moved into finalizing the writing of the territorial youth strategy. So this was based off of many different visits to the communities, going to youth centers, going to schools, going to youth events, talking with young people everywhere that the collective could, and hearing their voices about what they want to see in the territory, what they think needs to improve for their community specifically. And all of that data was collected and, qualitative, quantitative, and put into this document that is the strategy. And we are now at the place where the strategy has been signed on, and we are in the implementation phase. So the strategy itself, if you have not seen the document, it's kind of a lengthy document, so I know maybe not everyone has read through it all or maybe even seen it. Actually, I'm curious here, who has looked at the territorial youth strategy? Beautiful, that's a good amount, that's amazing. Yes, so this document is a process as well as a product. So the process of the territorial youth strategy is this collective impact process. So it is all about bringing community together, talking about issues, working together on these things. So the process of involving youth in every step of that is really, really crucial. And the product is the document itself. So the actual strategy is a guiding document for decision makers at all levels and in every sector. And it will continue to exist as a living document for years to come and will be revised yearly based on conversations at our annual accountability forum. And if folks are familiar with the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls Two-Spirit Plus strategy, we have gotten a lot of guidance and advice from that group, and it follows a similar kind of structure and process as that. They just had their accountability forum a couple weeks ago, which we went to, and it was really beautifully done. And it's really important for these things, for the community to see that strategies aren't just going to be created and then sit on a shelf and nothing actually be done about it, because that is so often sometimes what happens. So having accountability forum to be able to come back yearly to youth and say, this is what's being done, here are the gaps that still are existing that we need to address, and hearing from them yearly is really key to the process.
So pretty much building right off of that, goals and objectives. So after the accountability forums is getting signatories for the TYS. So it's pretty much just us encouraging organizations and departments and First Nations to sign on to that territorial use strategy, and then create a system to evaluate the effectiveness of a territorial use strategy, so we can always stay accountable ourselves and keep our signatories accountable. And Aaron already touched on accountability quite a bit. So we have our community partnership table and our annual accountability forums. And then we have our second year priorities, focusing on priorities identified by youth and hold partners accountable to actually uplift those. I'm balancing my hands quite a bit right now, so. So where we are right now, the territorial youth strategy is now signed on by leaders and has been getting signed on slowly while we go out to communities and working on implementing calls to action, as well as holding signatories accountable to the work and tracking the progress throughout the Yukon and continuing to engage and report back to youth at the next accountability forum. So that includes collecting data while we go out to communities and do engagement and trying to get our partners to tell us what they've done and just holding them accountable.
Yeah, and I'd also like to say on that point of like signatories, we currently have over 50 signatories of the strategy that it was signed on at the Yukon Youth Summit in April, which is like the space that we collaborate with for our accountability forum. And the signatories include the Premier of the Yukon, the Deputy Premier, some of the chiefs of some of the First Nations, community organizations. So it's a wide variety, and it's really amazing. We've seen, since it's been signed on, we've seen a lot more people coming to the table. We've seen YG coming to the table in a really big way, collaborating with us on our implementation teams and all that kind of stuff. So it's been really, really exciting. There's been like a huge momentum in it being used in the last like 6 months. So we want to talk a little bit about the strategy in action. So like, what does it mean to use a territorial youth strategy? Like, people see it, young people see it, okay, it's a big document with a lot of things, like a lot of calls to action. What is that? It can be used in many different ways. We wanted to highlight a few. The Civic Youth Fellowships. So City Councillor Melissa Murray, in the last council in the spring, put forward a motion for City Council to create a Civic Youth Fellowship. And the motion stated that the City of Whitehorse signed the TYS declaration and quoted the document's vision of creating a sense of belonging for all youth. And that motion was passed. So that was a really great way to see the strategy being directly quoted and used to uplift a motion getting passed in City Council. The Youth Outreach Clinic, we wanted to highlight as well, who you just saw up here. It's a really incredible, free confidential services for youth aged 12 to 18. It directly addresses one of the basic needs calls to action, which is healthcare for young people. And we're so excited to see that expand, and we're really excited to, hopefully see that expand to communities as well. And we've had lots of conversations with their team. And it's just a really incredible thing. We've heard lots of really good feedback from young people about it already. And then the BGC Yukon drop-in. So one of the priorities under mental wellness is drop-in services for youth. Their drop-in program, they have the downtown Whitehorse location, but they also do have a location in Haines Junction as well that works out of the school. But the downtown Whitehorse youth drop-in space is open 7 days a week now, as of maybe 5 months ago. That addresses the call to action 3.1 about youth centers and drop-ins, and especially having them open after hours and every day of the week is really, really important. And now a big part of our work is advocacy, and what we're also looking to do is expand things like that into the communities as well, so that it isn't just Whitehorse focused, and BGC is doing a lot of work on that. We have our implementation teams. So once the strategy was signed on, we knew that we needed to have kind of teams within the collective to work on specific priorities. So probably kind of hard to read for you guys from where you are, but we've broken the teams down into 3 three teams that address two sections of the strategy each. So that we have our basic needs and community safety and harm reduction team, mental wellness and land stewardship, and access to education and employment. And then what you see above those are the calls to action that were pulled out and identified at the Yukon Youth Summit in April as priorities for this year by young people. So there are, I think there's 37 calls to action total in the strategy. And then each year at the Accountability Forum, we, and also through our engagement throughout the year, we get youth to kind of identify what are your like immediate priorities that need to have work done right now. So these were what youth identified. And it doesn't mean that work towards the other calls to action aren't happening as well. But this is kind of things that youth were like, this needs to happen immediately. And probably to no one's surprise, the mental wellness and land stewardship section is quite large with what was identified. So things like mental health resources for the remote communities. Education is also a big one, sense of belonging in schools, alternative education. Probably the biggest thing that everyone, all youth, all people in general are talking about right now is housing security. That is like kind of the number one across the board concern for youth and everyone else. So these teams have some funding that we've been applying to different pots of funding to get these teams money. And these teams are a collaboration of partners from within the collective. There's around like 5 to 8 people on each implementation team. And they're working on immediate kind of actionable projects that can be done right now, as we also do kind of the higher level advocacy work to like government.
And then talking more about accountability. So what accountability actually fully looks like for us is tracking the work. So we're going to our community partnership tables. We're going to, my brain blanked. We're going to communities. We are getting spreadsheets on Google, always fun, and inputting the data. We are collecting sticky notes and writing it all down. We are using quantitative and qualitative data as much as possible to actually see how we are doing and who we need to hold accountable. Is it us? Is it any of our partners to uplift our youth? And then we're going to communities. We just went to Old Crow not that long ago to build relationships, keep a consistency with our communities, and make sure as many voices can be heard. And then with that advocacy, Erin is a lot more known of the advocacy part. I do a lot of the data part, so bear with me. So we're advocating for fulfilling youth responsibilities and our partners' responsibilities, especially when it comes to implementation, as well as approaching young people and making sure we are actually doing the work. And I think I did that.
Yeah. That's basically it. There's like a lot of information there and a lot more we could say. I know we have a short amount of time to present on this. I don't know if we have any time for a couple of questions. Maybe not. If you do have questions, you can come talk to us. Okay.
I'll make it quick, but I'm just curious because I didn't see in any of those call to actions anything being done about climate anxiety workshops and things like that, because that's quite a thing that comes up a lot with the youth that I support. Mm-hmm. They're really anxious about like global warming and the polar ice caps melting, and just wondering if in the strategy itself there's a plan for that.
Yeah. Coincidentally, the team the mental wellness and land and stewardship team is actually building a climate anxiety workshop right now that was proposed by one of our youth on that team, who is Sydney Sinclair, who was up here on the youth panel earlier today. And she has created like an outline for a climate anxiety workshop, and we're hoping to start creating that and then deliver that in Whitehorse and the communities and have youth delivering that workshop. But yeah, definitely it's like a huge conversation that team is having. Thank you. All right.
Closing remarks?
Yeah, if you'd like to know more, feel free to email us, come chat to us today. If you would like a copy of the strategy, you can find it at yukonyouth.com, the BITE website. There is a Territorial Youth Collective column there, and you can download the strategy or you can email us for it. Yeah, thank you so much.